Hello, this is Paloma Farmer, and this is a demo of slicing up an asset. There are just a few steps to making a sliced asset. Once you get used to it, you'll find it pretty easy, but it can be a little hard to grasp conceptually at first. The steps are: we need to gather our resources. That means the asset and a grid to work with. We need to slice the asset, which is done by planning those slices, creating shapes for the slices, and then separating them out. Then we need to organize the file and export, and sometimes we need to create a guide so that whoever's implementing the art and doing the config knows how to put it back together. So slicing a piece of art is basically just taking one decoration or one building and turning it into 3 or 4 or however many pieces is needed to achieve whatever it is we need to do. So what I have open right here is an example of a piece of art that needs sliced. So this asset right here is sort of a panel that's supposed to go into the bridge on the Star Trek Enterprise for one of our events. And as you can see, this piece of wall that's clearly supposed to be behind the panel is showing up in front of it. Now that's a Z sorting error. I'm not going to go into the details of why that happens right now, but it is something that slicing can sometimes fix. And in this case, if we just slice up this panel asset into a few pieces, it should fix this Z-sorting problem. Okay, let's get to work. So the first step is to gather resources, and by that I just mean open the file you want to slice and open a grid. Now the grid is really important. The grid I would recommend using is the Event District grid, which you can find in the starter kit in the templates folder. The Event District grid is just our usual grid, but it's the size of the event district, which is irrelevant for this use, and it is vector, which is very relevant. That means that we can use this grid for really accurate measurements, whereas with the PNG grid we usually use, the rasterized grid, we can only kind of guess that we're getting the measurements right. With a vector grid, working with vector art, you know you're going to get it right every time. So the artwork I need to slice is right here. I've already got it selected. I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to paste it in to a copy of this event district grid. As you can see, it's a little far back in its bounding box because it was intended to be up against a wall, and we want to keep it there. We don't want to move anything. We want to make sure everything's always aligned to the bounding box. So before I get started, I want to recommend that you go ahead and pull down your view menu and choose snap to point. You want to do this because it's going to make it really easy to draw your bounding boxes really accurately. So the next thing we need to start doing is planning our slices. So I'm going to slice this into 2 decorations that are 1 by 2 in size, and then one that is 1 by 1. The reason that I'm choosing to slice it that way is it's better than slicing it into 5 pieces, but it's also better than slicing it into 2 pieces because they would be very long. The more square the assets can be, the more likely it is that they're going to solve the Z-sorting problem, which is the reason we're slicing this asset. So I think that that's close enough to square. So I'm making 1 by 2 here. I'll make it so you can see it better. That's a 1 by 2 footprint. I'm going to do it over here for symmetry. And then I'm going to put a 1 by 1 in the middle. And then now you can see. So these are the footprints that I want to use for my slices. What that means is I'm taking this one really long decoration and I'm splitting it into these 3 decorations. What we need to do next is to create the shapes of our slices, and that doesn't make a lot of sense, so I'm just going to show you what I mean. Let me get a nice contrasting color here, nice thick stroke so you can see what I'm doing. Now what I'm doing is I'm planning out how I want to cut up my artwork. That color is no good. So that it will line up right. I need to work in a little overlap. I'll explain why in just a minute. So that's what my first slice will look like. Here's my second one. As you can see, this isn't amazing, perfect work I'm doing here. It's very rough, but it's just to make sure we've got everything we need. That's a little too much overlap there. Let me fix that. So now what I have is my 3 slice shapes. So this would be the first slice, this would be the middle one, and this would be the second one. So if you can think of the artwork kind of contained in this shape, that is going to be the first deco, this will be the second deco, and this will be the third deco here. The reason that it needs overlap is if we were to just kind of chop the artwork up right down the middle with no overlap on either side, a little fuzzy line will show up once it's finally in the game. This is partially because we allow our users to zoom freely. It's also because our work is anti-aliased, so it means it has fuzzy little edges. It's just a better idea to use overlapping shapes. So now let me show you what I'm going to do with these shapes, and hopefully it'll clarify what exactly they're for. So for each slice, I'm going to select the bounding box for that slice. I'm going to select the shape and the artwork itself. I'm going to make a copy. And now I want to deselect the bounding box, and I'm going to hit Command 7, and what that does is it uses a clipping mask to cut the artwork off. So now this is my first slice. Basically this is deco 1 of 3. Now I'm going to do that again. Select the bounding box, the slice shape, and the artwork. I'm going to deselect the bounding box, and I am going to hit Command 7. I'm going to do it one more time. Bounding box, slice shape, artwork, copy, deselect the bounding box, and Command 7. Now I have my 3 slices, so let me show you how it'll work. Here's the first one. We can use snapping. Let me turn off the bounding box there to stick those together. And then I'll snap the last one in place too. And voila! We've recreated the artwork, oops, except for we have sliced it up into 3 pieces. Now, I don't know if this will show up on the video, but Illustrator sometimes shows these little lines when you use this method. Little tiny lines show up in the artwork. When you export it, those will disappear. It's just Illustrator not really showing things accurately, which it sometimes does with changes at a very small scale. And those are our 3 decos. So we've successfully sliced them up. So the next thing we want to do is organize the file. And that, by which I mean, is we need to make 3 artboards for this artwork. So another thing I'm going to do to organize it is I'm going to take this artwork and put it on its own layer, so we can easily turn off the bounding box or the artwork as we need to. I'm going to turn off the artwork, and then I'm going to select my artboard tool. So when you have the artboard tool selected, if you click on an object or a shape with that artboard tool, it will make a bounding box an artboard that perfectly conforms to the shape. So this is a good way to make sure that your bounding box for your asset is perfectly aligned inside of the artboard. I'm going to turn my artwork back on so I know how tall I need to make this stuff. Drag up the artboard so that it fits all of our artwork. And there we go. We have our artwork. We have the bounding boxes all ready to export. There's one last thing I'm going to do. I'm going to give these artboards names. So I'll call it wall panel 01. You want to use a consistent naming scheme that is like easy to figure out, 02, so that when this artwork is getting configured, it's really easy for the person configuring it to figure out what they're supposed to do with it. So I have the artboard names, wall panel 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my bounding box, all the extra artwork, and I'm going to clean up whatever artboards I don't need. I'm doing this because I'm about to use a script that exports all the artboards, and we only want to export these ones. So now to export, I'm going to use multi-exporter, TinyCo version, which you can find in the starter kit as well. This is going to export each artboard with the artboard name, but I'm going to add in front of it decoration _, which is part of our naming convention. And then on the end, at 4x, because we're first exporting the 4x versions. So that means we want to leave the scale at 100%. It's going to export at 100% of its usual size. Then I'm going to choose a folder. My computer taking its sweet time. I have an export folder here already, and I'm going to press export. It should only take a second, and then I'm going to do it again. Scripts multi-exporter TinyCo version. I'm going to change the suffix to 2x and the scale to 50%. Now it's exporting it at 50%, so we need the suffix to be 2x. We export. And then one more time, multi-exporter. I'm going to change the scale to 25%, and I'm going to get rid of the suffix completely. So the reason that you might want to use the multi-exporter is, let's say you have a sliced up piece of art or a fence or something that has a ton of artboards and just a ton of different things. This way you can export everything all at once using only 3 rounds of using the script, instead of having to export like 50 times or 60 times or however many assets it is. In this case we break even because there's 3 decorations here and I had to use the script 3 times, but sometimes it can really be worth it. So we press export the last time, and then I'm going to go ahead and open up the folder. Here we go. So here's my export folder. And you can see in here 9 files. Looks exactly how many we want. And it's exported all the artwork. And that's perfect. And from there, you just drop it off, do whatever you do like normal. The last thing you have to do sometimes is provide a guide. So if this is an event district, all this artwork is getting placed outside of the user's control. That means someone within the company has to put it on the map, and you need to have a guide that shows where everything goes. So that's exactly what this sort of thing is. In the case of this asset, it would be just those 3 decorations next to each other in a screenshot with the bounding boxes. That would be pretty much all you need. But with something more complex, there can be a lot more pieces to it. And that is it. That is how you slice up an asset